Hey YouTube, this is Cosmic Road. I just wanted to pop in for a few minutes and talk about John Greenewald and his reaction, the Black Vault's reaction to the UFO UAP hearing on Capitol Hill the other day. It's all anybody's been talking about is the UAP hearing on Capitol Hill, and rightly so. It is very exciting. The first time Congress has touched on this subject and heard hearings on it in over 50 years. So everybody is chiming in, and I had really been looking forward to hearing John's take on it. That is John Greenewald of the Black Vault, and I was very disappointed in his take. I'll be honest. I yeah, actually, I'm very frustrated by his take. He seems to really be more on the side of believing what the gentleman who testified in front of Congress had to say, and really being more, he has always been a little closer to the debunking side of the aisle than I would like. But that's okay. I think in general, he has been a very good thing for the community, for the UFO community. And I like him a lot and I respect him a lot. But he has frustrated me in the past by how chummy he is with the debunking side of the whole argument, of the whole community. And in this case, I think that he really has gone a little too further in that direction for my taste. He seems to believe what these guys have to say. Well, first of all, let me say something positive. When he was talking about the UFO footage that they have come out with, that they released in the hearing, the little blip that you see in the cockpit that the pilot took, and you just see like 3 frames of it. And John is good enough to break it down, frame by frame. And that was really nice. And he believes, as I do, that they deliberately released the weakest of their footage just so that people could debunk it. I firmly believe that. I know they have much better stuff. Clearly, they have they have the Nimitz level, probably 20 times that, or if not 50 or 100 of stuff equally as good or more compelling than the Nimitz stuff. Remember, the Nimitz stuff is what Lou and his people were able to get declassified. So imagine the stuff that they weren't able to get declassified. So they've got some really juicy stuff that they're not sharing with us, deliberately concealing from us. And John and I agree that this really lame, weak footage they put out last week was had to be deliberately bad. Anyway, that's my take on it. As everybody in the chat, comment if you can hear me. Let me know that you can hear me and that my microphone is working. Is everything cool? Can you hear me, guys? Waiting for some chats. Let me know if you can hear me. Let's see. All right. Yeah, so John and I agree about the weak UFO, but well, let's talk about the pyramids, the flying pyramids over the battle group. And I'm still not sure if anybody can hear me. I want to make sure this microphone is working. So please drop me a comment if you can hear this podcast. So let me know. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is my microphone working? Please let me know. I'm seeing the little bar at the microphone. It says green, but it only has one little. Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, great. Okay, very good. All right, so let me go to the part that I don't like. So John was talking, or he was examining the testimony of the 2 gentlemen that are purportedly building the successor program to the UAP task force, AIM-SONG as it's being called. So, and they were talking about the flying triangles or the pyramids. and they were essentially debunking that, saying they were simply drones. Well, Lou Elizondo has come out on the record saying, no, they weren't drones and that's BS. And I believe Lou a lot more than I believe these guys, like 1,000%. So, yeah, so that's one point of difference. But also, how would it make any sense for, drones, let's say from China or Russia, to be over a U.S. battle group at sea? If we saw enemy drones over our ships, we would shoot them down or disable them. According to Lou Elizondo, we have the technology simply to disable them and to knock them out of the sky that way. We don't even have to shoot them out of the sky. But yeah, if enemy drones were over our ships, we would just knock them out of the sky. So the idea that they could be drones is ridiculous. It makes no sense. First of all, an enemy drone, they wouldn't be over our ships. They would be surveilling us from a distance, unless it was some sort of show of force. But you can't convince me that China or Russia would have some sort of crazy show of force where they would send these powerful drones over our ships that we couldn't do anything about. I don't believe that for a moment. If they had this technology, they would be taking over the world. So that's ridiculous. So these guys in Congress, or these guys testifying in front of Congress, these DOD guys are lying. They are concealing the truth. This is all, yeah. So John is believing these guys, and he is taking their testimony at face value, or at least that's what he's saying. He does seem to have a few quibbles here and there where he thinks they may be holding stuff back or something like that. But in general, he seems to be taking their side and believing what they have to say. And he even breaks down why he didn't come out in favor of these videos to begin with, etc. He goes through the history of the pyramid or triangle video released by Jeremy Corbell last year. I think it was last year. So anyway, so I strongly disagree with John on that. I would love to hear. It's a shame that Lou seems to be going into retirement for a while. Although that is really interesting. But I would love to hear his further comments. He has commented on the hearing, and about the drones again. But he has gone into seclusion. He has just given his last interview on a podcast for the time being, for the near future, and that is really. Hey guys, thanks for joining the show. Did y'all see the hearing? What did y'all think? And what do y'all think Lou is doing now that he has stepped away from doing interviews? Because he had just been doing a whole rash of interviews, and now he has gone into seclusion. I'm guessing that means the next gear is being shifted. He's talking about the years in this whole process, and the first year and second year and so on. So are we entering third year now? Is that what he's talking about? People online are talking about possible immunity or amnesty for people involved in UFO programs so that they can come forward and reveal the truth about the government's involvement in the phenomenon. Could that have anything to do with it? That would be a game changer. That would be amazing. But yeah, so one thing I do agree with John about is probably is somewhat is the more loose organization of ATIP. ATIP was an outgrowth or something of OSAP. There have been several different versions of the story of the creation of ATIP and OSAP. So I still don't know exactly how that started, but anyway, for whatever, OSAP came first. It had the budget. It's the one that commissioned those reports. Those 20 or 40 reports that talking about the physics of how these things work and et cetera. It's really interesting reports. I read a couple of them. Oh, the most fascinating one that I read was the Dr. Pudolf's report on zero energy and how these ships operate, and the physics of how these alien craft operate, and the 0 point energy, and how they can even manipulate time as you get closer to these objects. Anyway, so that was OSAP doing that, investigating Skinwalker Ranch and all that kind of stuff. And then ATIP came later. It was the pared down, stripped version, just focusing on the military encounters. And I do agree with John. That was probably a much smaller organization. It was probably very loosely knit. I do think that Lou was brought in to manage it, just as he says. I don't think that Lou is lying about that. I think he was the head of it, brought in after somebody else left. I don't think that we know who the original head of ATIP was. So, that's, possibly he left because they couldn't get funding. And so they brought on Lou. And so Lou was in charge of this loosely knit group who had other day jobs. They weren't getting paid for ATIP, but they were brought on to manage this data and collate this data and organize this effort. And there probably weren't a whole lot of them, and they didn't have any particular resources except what they were able to get through their day jobs. So I do agree with John to a limited extent on the whole ATIP thing. But I do think Lou was brought on to manage it, and that it was slightly more official than John is leading us to believe, or that maybe that John believes. But where I have a strong disagreement with John, and in fact, it makes me a little angry, honestly, is the whole disinformation thing. And this is why as much as I love and appreciate John, he frustrates me a lot because he leans more into the government side of things, the big government, that kind of stuff. He's more cozy with that side than I would like, and he welcomes apparently a disinformation act, or some campaign that would limit the spread of disinformation. I think his exact quote was, "Why wouldn't you want disinformation? Oh, yeah, why wouldn't you want less disinformation out there?" Is his quote, or as close as I can get to his exact quote. Well, the reason, John, why you wouldn't want an official act out there limiting disinformation is because who decides what is disinformation? Remember, this is the government, the same government that has been lying to us for years about various things. I don't want to get political, but there are a lot of false narratives that have been played out over the last few years that are, very prevalent in the media and the government and FBI. It's yeah. So it's not a good thing what has been happening in the last few years. There's a lot of disinformation out there being put out by the government. The government was just about to have a ministry of truth, for God's sakes, an actual propaganda wing of the government. So you want them to manage what's real information and what's false information? No, no, that's bad. And yes, so that is limiting free speech. You have the freedom to lie in this country. If you want to bullshit, you can bullshit. You can do that. That's normal. All that advertising you see on TV and the radio, not all of that is true. Is this disinformation act going to limit what you can advertise or what you can say? Um, yeah, so I strongly disagree with that. And just the idea of a disinformation act makes me physically uncomfortable and angry quite a bit. Yeah, John at the Black Vault. We're talking about John Greenewald at the Black Vault, who I like and admire a lot, and I think he is good for the community. He really is, getting all these FOIA documents and sharing them, and he really is a positive force in general. But he is very chummy, seemingly, with these guys that are spreading disinformation, and he is believing these two fellows that were testifying before Congress. He seems to think that they are being honest when I strongly don't think they are. Um, yeah, about the drones, etc. And he also is a very kind of chummy with Mick West. He says admiring things about Mick West, and I think that Mick is an okay guy. But anybody that is that committed to a narrative does not have his mind open. And so I, am not an admirer of Nick West, but I do think he's a smart, nice guy. And I do think that we need some doubters in the community to keep us honest. I think that's a good thing in general, but you have to come into it sincerely and with your mind open if you want honest answers. And that's my take on it. Let me read your comments, see what you have to say about it. Yeah, you think Lou is being told to shut his pie hole or else? Well, he is, and he absolutely is. He skirts the limit of what he can say. And like the other day, I was listening to an interview that he was giving, and he was basically suggesting or almost saying outright that we have recovered craft, alien ships. Now he couldn't say that exactly because that was the limit of his NDA, was to strongly hint that we have these craft, and that's all he could say. But I absolutely believe that we do have those craft. I believe Bob Lazar and all that kind of stuff. We've had ships since Roswell, if not before. From my research, it appears that the men in black existed at Roswell. So the men in black existed before Roswell. So the government's interest in the phenomenon goes back before then. I don't know how long. The earliest suppressed UFO report that I can find is from a newspaper, I think in New England in like 1907 or something. There was a report of a UFO. They didn't have that word back then, but of a down, weird ship that didn't seem human or something. I forget exactly how they phrased it. And then they were forced to retract that story the next day. So that is the earliest encounter in America in the somewhat modern age that I can find where a UFO crash was suppressed, most likely by the government. So I think that the government's interest in all this goes back at least that far to the early 1900s. Anyway, so yeah, they've had ships, they have stuff going back forever. So I believe Lou, and I don't believe the new guys, the AIM song guys, who are saying that there are no ships. Yeah, no, that's what they said. There's no ships, or they didn't know about them. Well, they also didn't know about the Admiral Wilson leak. They didn't know about the UFOs manipulating our nukes at our nuclear silos. They don't know a lot of stuff, apparently. So, or that's what they want us to think. Gabriel says when the corporate bot government doesn't have any answers or won't say anything because their corporate owners says so, people will start wondering and come up with different theories. Only logical. Yeah, that's right. In the lack of legitimate information, we're going to make up our own theories. And so it would be really nice to have a government that was an ally of the people instead of an ally of the government or the cabal, whatever you want to say. Uh, yeah, let's see. Give Lou immunity from Congress. Oh, wouldn't that be nice if Lou had immunity and he could just break his non-disclosure agreement and just talk about all of this? That would be awesome. That would be really awesome. Your UFO historian, Majestic Q clearance, Lou will probably not throw his buddies in the corporate intelligence community under the bus. No, he won't. He's an honorable guy. He's not going to do anything like that. But he knows a lot. He knows a lot. How much does he know? Is he privy to any of that Area 51 stuff? If it's still at Area 51, I like to call it the Area 51 stuff because we know what that means. Even if the actual, the experiments or the research or the project, whatever it is that was at Area 51, even if that has been moved somewhere else, Area 51 is a good, a catchphrase or whatever, catch-all for that effort. Also, the breakaway group, as Richard Nolan likes to call it. Yeah. So how much of that does Lou know? How much of it does he suspect or believe? Well, he knows that we have ships. We know he was talking about other programs that have existed between Blue Book and ATIP. So he is aware that there are other programs. He is aware that there are downed ships that we have. So I think that Lou probably knows a lot. I don't know how much he knows. I would love to know. So yeah, give Lou immunity. And if you just have to, if you don't want to give blanket immunity to everybody, just give Lou immunity. Let him speak. And yeah, find some of those Area 51 guys, give them immunity. Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, that would be incredible. That'd be incredible. I love the idea of these Area 51 guys getting immunity or amnesty. I guess you would have to pick the old timers because the guys that are currently in the project aren't going to be able to talk. And some of them are probably very invested in what's going on and dealing with the beings doing whatever they're doing because they are seemingly interacting with at least some of these beings. A lot of the alien abductees see government officials interacting with the beings when they're abducted. So, something's going on. I have no clue what, the hybrid program. There's a lot of stories about, Eisenhower and making deals with these beings and the various details of those deals. Um, there's various accounts of that. I may have to do a separate video on that. The problem is there are differing accounts of that event and whatever different accounts of those deals. So I don't know exactly the truth behind that, but it's a fascinating story, and some version of that is probably true. Um, yeah, was still the means. Show them enough is enough. Yes, yes, enough is enough. These guys are doing another project, Blue Book. They are trying to conceal and hide information from us. They are lying to us. They are treating us like we're idiots, and they are trying to put the genie back in the bottle. But the genie is out of the bottle. They're talking about creating a Disinformation Act. I guess they think that is going to put the genie back in the bottle. They won't allow people to talk about it. So that'll put that's what they want to do. That is what they want to do. They want to put the genie back in the bottle, but I don't think they can. I think those days are past. The internet is our friend in that. The information age is a double-edged sword because there is disinformation along with the information. There's a lot of BS out there. But a lot of that BS is coming from the government. Make no mistake. So, yeah, they should not be in charge of what is real and what is not, what is true and what is not. Yeah. Uh, anyway, that's so I strongly disagree with John about a lot of those things. I think that he is way too kind to the DoD guys, the AIM song guys. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Lou's background, R.H. Bennett is saying you have to remember Lou's background, which was disinformation. So can he honestly be trusted? I mean, like the guy, he has exceptionally good, incredible information, but should it be trusted? Well, I don't know if his background was specifically in disinformation, but it was in counterintelligence. I have a feeling that he was probably interrogating people. Not a real pleasant job, and that whole kind of thing. But was he also putting out disinformation to dismay or discourage our enemies and to confuse them? Possibly he was. And that idea has been around since the very beginning of Lou coming out, is that he does have this background. So can you trust him? Well, my response to that is, if they were going to pick somebody to spread disinformation, it wouldn't be a known disinformation agent. So no, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I do believe Lou. I do think there are things that he can't say and won't say. And he has said many times, and in fact, it's almost his catchphrase at this point. You have to read between the lines, and there's the truth whispers. He said that multiple times. The truth whispers. What does that mean, Lou? What are you getting at? So yeah, so he has been putting out these breadcrumbs, and he even says they're breadcrumbs. He uses that phrase. So there are things that he is saying without saying. And, I have done many videos trying to examine the things that he is saying without saying. Well, like the other day, just hinting that there are ships, that we have crashes. Speaking of crashes, I was watching a interesting interview the other day with an experiencer, because one of the questions that arises very frequently is, okay, so there's crashes. Why are there so many crashes? These aliens come from the stars and they crash their ships here. What's going on? Why are they gifts? What's happening? Now, I tend to think that they are, maybe they're gifts. Somebody that was a witness to the Roswell incident, and who actually was psychically linked, apparently, with one or more of the beings that were crashed and dying, felt their fear. They were very fearful, these beings that were dying and having crashed their ship. If that's true, that doesn't sound like they were doing it as a gift. It sounds like they legitimately crashed. So, did we crash them? Well, in the interview the other day, the experiencer said that the R electromagnetic sphere, what's the word for that? Am I getting that word right? That our electromagnetic sphere bubble, whatever it is very unstable. And that is why they continually crash their ships, is because they just don't operate very well on this planet. Which is an interesting explanation, if true. Who knows? This experiencer was fascinating, because she was an alien abductee or contactee. Was one of these people who were able to fly the ship, which comes up a lot. Alien abductees or contactees are often asked or trained in how to fly these ships, and it has to do with consciousness. A lot of times they seem to merge their consciousness with that of the ship. And so they, in essence, become the ship. And so that was her experience, where she was the ship and she was flying in the ship. So, that's a pretty far out there story. Probably not one that somebody like John Greenewald, for example, would take seriously, but I do. My limited interaction with the phenomenon has shown me that it's pretty crazy. It's pretty weird. It's some pretty crazy shit. So you have to, look at the crazy stuff to get the truth in all of this, because it's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts. It's not just nuts and the bolts, and it's nothing that we could really. I mean, well, I don't want to say that we couldn't understand, but it's nothing that we do understand. And looking at it from our limited point of view, looking at the physics of moving from one star to another, with the technology that we have, and understanding it from our point of view, it is unhelpful, because that's not the way it works. these things have the ability to manipulate, the physical world in a way that we don't understand. Some of them even seem to be able to move through dimensions, through higher planes of existence. Let's see. R.H. Bennett says, I know Jeremy Corbell has no trust in Lou at all. Okay, well, I have not seen that. Can you back that up? Do you have a link to that? I have not seen Jeremy comment negatively on Lou. He is very close to George Knapp, who I believe is very pro Lou. So if you can back that up, I would be very interested in seeing what Jeremy Corbell had to say about Lou Elizondo. Let's see. UFO historian Majestic Q Clearance says, felt I've been spoon fed many years now. At the hearing, I got a happy meal with little info. Yeah. Yeah, that's about right. Let's see. And he says, yeah, he doesn't know that about Jeremy. Gabriel says, if Lou starts pushing immunity for his buddies, I would probably start believing him more. Yeah, well, that would be really nice. And that does seem to be a topic of conversation. UFO Jesus and Post Disclosure World just put out a video yesterday or a couple of days ago talking about that very thing. That he seems to think that there's a strong possibility that we could be getting immunity for some of these guys, maybe even blanket immunity. There was a discussion on Twitter from Joe Murgia and somebody else, somebody who would know more about this stuff, the difference between immunity and amnesty, and which one you would need to affect what we want, which is for these guys to be able to come and talk about it without fear of prosecution. So yeah, that would be amazing if that happened. I sure hope that happened. That would be, like I said, a game changer. And yeah, I would they let that happen? I mean, the powers that be, would they allow that to happen? Um, you know, I don't think so. Could the tide of public interest be so strong at this point that they could push that forward and make that happen? I think that Congress, unlikely as it seems, might be our ally now. Congress has not been the ally of the people for a while, but it was a congressman the other day at the hearing that had to enter the Admiral Wilson leak into the record because the AIM guys were stonewalling and pretending they had not even heard of it. So they're bullshitting and lying and obfuscating. So the congressman is the one who had to enter that leak into the record. So, of course, it was another congressman that was pushing the Disinformation Act, that we should limit what people can talk about. So, um, there's the good congressman and the bad congressman, the one that's trying to push things forward and the one that's trying to hide things and even limit free speech. And yes, John Greenewald, that is limiting free speech. He was trying to say that wasn't limiting free speech. Yes, you have the ability to lie. That is part of your freedom of speech. You can bullshit. And they were. But yeah, let's see. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I'm probably going to wrap this up pretty soon. But I just wanted to drop my few cents on John Greenewald's reaction to the UAP UFO hearing on Capitol Hill. It was an interesting reaction, and I agree with a few things. Like I do believe that the Ain Song guys deliberately released a very weak UFO video just so people like Nick West debunk it because they don't want this out there. They don't want people talking about this clearly. They want a Disinformation Act so people won't talk about it. They want to hide the stuff and lie about it, pretend there's no crashes, pretend it's all drones. When asked, well, which of these incidents are all authentic alien incidents? They said, oh, well, we can only point to one that's unexplained, and that's the Nimitz. So really, out of the 144 that were looked at by the UAP task force, only one was explained. And you're telling me that all of those encounters, except for the Nimitz, they're all explainable and real. Pull the other leg, guys. Yeah. So Gabriel says he hasn't watched UFO's latest UFO Jesus's latest video. I can't say that. Yeah, it was a good video. Good video. I recommend it. Like UFO Jesus. He's got some good things to say, and he's always worth watching. So I do think that he has entertained the Mick West position a little too strongly. He has been willing to entertain the idea that all of this is nonsense and is illusory. But it's not. I've had some encounters with it at this point. Most of my encounters have been of the more metaphysical kind, but that seems to be the bulk of it. Peter Maxwell Slattery from Australia, who is a high level experiencer, and he's put out some really great content. I recommend you watching his interviews and his movie. I think it's multi-dimensional. Um, anyway, he is a thoughtful guy, and like I say, a high level experiencer of multi phenomenal experiencer. And he says that of all the things that we're seeing in the skies and related to the phenomenon, only the bottom 10% is nuts and bolts physical stuff. 90% of it is metaphysical, spiritual, consciousness type stuff. And so it's no surprise if that's true, then that what I have experienced mainly has been of the more metaphysical kind, or the consciousness kind. So yeah. Anyway, so it's weird. This stuff is weird. Once you've experienced it, all these people like Mick West are just silly. Worse than silly, because they're destructive, because they are spreading disinformation. We need to get to the bottom of this. We need to understand it and deal with it and interact with it in a positive way. Denying it is unhelpful and, like I say, even destructive, because it's undoing the good that we could be doing, understanding it better. And so I like UFO Jesus a lot, but he has been willing to entertain the Mick West position a little too much. For me. But like I say, I like him, and I also like John Greenewald a lot. But the truth behind all of this seems to be very woo woo. It seems to be very weird and very out there, very dimensional and otherworldly and other dimensionally, other reality, if that's a word. There seems to be other realities, and maybe many other realities, an infinite number possibly. Uh, and so somehow this all has to do with other dimensions and higher dimensions and metaphysics that we can't wrap our brain around, but that we can interact with, and we can even possibly evolve ourselves to understand it better. There are people that understand it a lot better than I do, and I'm trying to learn. I am trying to learn this stuff and to interact with it and to get to a point where I can understand it better. And so I would like to talk to more experiencers and people that do interact with this stuff at a higher level than I do, and to learn what they have to say about the truth behind the phenomenon. It's fascinating to me, and it's someday we're going to learn, but it's not going to be because of these jokers testifying before Congress. And we're going to have to do this ourselves. But I do think it's important for us to push the Congress to do what they can, because there are some of them that are willing to do some good on this. Like, the guy that was entering the Admiral Wilson leak into the record. So thank you for that. I think his name was Gallagher. So thank you, Gallagher. That was awesome. Keep it up. The rest of you guys that are good, keep it up. Guys that are trying to limit what people can say. What the hell? you're gonna limit free speech? You're not gonna allow people to talk about this? Yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna go another rant about that. But does anybody have any final questions or comments? Because I'm gonna hit the road. I actually have a MUFON meeting. I'm the co-founder of a local MUFON chapter, and we have a MUFON meeting coming up in a couple hours. So I'm going to go do that. If nobody has any final comments or questions, I'm gonna bug out. Yeah, thank you. Have a good day. Americans should protest. That's what Gabriel says. Yeah, they should. They totally should. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Oh yeah, don't forget to hit like. Please hit like. Please give a big thumbs up. Comment below. Let me know what you think because I don't think this live chat is going to appear. Unfortunately, I need to learn how to do that. I think I just have to hit a button. Anyway, but yeah, please comment below, hit like, please subscribe, and if you do subscribe, hit the bell next to it so you can be notified of future videos. All right, later. Have a good weekend.